What's the hardest thing about writing? Well, it's getting started. Maybe you're having a hard time coming up with a story idea, or you're stuck on where to take your story next. If you want a way into a story or a way through, I have 9 story starters to help you. This free PDF is full of story seeds and prompts to get you going. To download your 9 story starters, go to nancypanuccio.com/start. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with 2 C's, nancypanuccio.com/start. So, 2 questions. What is your character running towards? What is he or she running away from? What is your character trying to avoid? What truth or outcome is she trying to outrun? Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and writing coach. And each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. How do you build character into the structure of your story? What drives your story forward? What's the story underneath the plot? You never want to rely on plot structures alone. Save the cat, the 3-act structure, the 4-act structure, the hero's journey, etc. You want to avoid the formulaic plot structure, the expected. Structure alone won't create the energy and momentum a story thrives on. There's the story underneath that's driving the plot, and that's all about character. In this episode, I'll cover 3 secrets about your character that will help you build momentum right into the structure of your story. So let's get right to it. Number 1, desire versus inner need. The desire is conscious, what they want to attain by the end of the novel, the concrete need. The inner need driving it may or may not be conscious. The desire is actualized in the world of the real. It's tangible. For example, Emma wants to be with Dex, or Romy wants to get out of prison. But all desires are born out of a deeper inner need. Sometimes we're aware of what's driving us. Romy wants to get out of prison because she has a young son on the outside. She spends the rest of the novel doing everything in her power to get out of prison and be reunited with her son. But sometimes that inner need that's running the show is embedded deep in our unconscious. As the writer, you may be aware of the inner need driving your character's conscious desire, and also how she or he masks that need. We all have a public persona and a private self, and both are in conflict with one another. That doesn't mean you tell the reader all of this. You just need to be aware of it so that you can infuse the narrative with your character's inner need and the ways he or she masks that need. Sometimes we pretend we don't even have the deeper need, or we are just barely aware that we have it. We don't always know what's driving us or why we want the things we do. Characters often hide the deeper inner need. They hide behind a persona. They mask the need, so they have the public persona and the private self. For example, Emma wants to be with Dex, but she hides the need. For the better part of the novel, she protects herself by putting him in the friend zone. So when we talk about inner conflict, it's the public persona in conflict with the inner need. So the persona protects, and what happens ultimately is that the inner need becomes stronger than the persona. The protective shell breaks down, and your character's fatal flaw is exposed. For example, I've just started reading a novel by David Nichols called You Are Here. There are two protagonists. Both of them try to protect themselves by staying home. One works from home. The other is a teacher, but he goes straight from school to home. He doesn't socialize. Neither character socializes. But the deeper inner need, at least for the male character, is to protect himself. His wife cheated on him. She left him. That's the scar. And so his inner need is to self-protect. Okay, on to number 2, the pleasure principle. As humans, we're driven towards pleasure and we run away from pain. In story, the pain your character is avoiding is the thing he or she dreads. For example, back to the David Nichols novel. It's fair to say that both characters are avoiding pain. They're not just avoiding socializing. They're not just introverts that would rather stay home. They're avoiding pain. So a great tool to use when you're developing a character is to think about what they're running away from. What do they dread? So 2 questions. What is your character running towards? What is he or she running away from? What is your character trying to avoid? What truth or outcome is she trying to outrun? Let's take Lolita as an example. Humbert Humbert wants to be with Lolita. The deeper need is to recapture his childhood love, Annabelle, who died at around age 12 from typhus. That's the unconscious inner need. But what is he trying to avoid? Well, he's trying to avoid his own awareness that what he's doing is wrong. He dreads losing Lolita. He dreads confronting his own conscience. He moves towards pleasure, Lolita, and away from pain. The awareness that what he's doing is fundamentally wrong. He dreads losing her, and so he spends the entire novel trying to win her affections. He's running away from his own conscience. Here's another example from Revolutionary Road. April Wheeler dreads being a stay-at-home mom forever. She can't fathom that. She feels trapped. That's the pain. So to escape the pain, she runs towards pleasure. She convinces her husband to quit his job and move to Paris, where she'll work and her husband can stay home with the kids. And that plan is set in motion. So in a scene, think about what your character wants and what they're dreading. What are they running towards? What are they running away from? The dread more often has us taking action more than the move towards pleasure. The dread activates the desire, the move towards pleasure. So you can think of the pain versus pleasure on the plot level and the scene level. So when you think of what a character wants in a scene, think of it as a binary set of opposites. What do they want and what do they dread? What's the worst thing that could happen to your character? Even when your character has one problem solved, another one will crop up. For April Wheeler, she becomes pregnant with her third child, and now her plans to move to Paris are foiled. So what does she do? She aborts the child with tragic consequences. She dies. The pain of being a stay-at-home mom, the dullness of that, the trap was too painful. That's what she was running away from for the whole novel. Okay, on to number 3. Your character is in crisis. Now, stories are about recreating real life. On the one hand, we want our stories to feel realistic and natural. We are recreating real life or a fully imagined life. I think of fantasy or fictional worlds built out of whole cloth. But we are trying to recreate something real to the reader. But there's no need to tell all the boring bits of life. That's a big mistake many writers make. We're not telling stories about people going to the store or having dinner. That's dull. It's not storytelling. It's extraneous noise. Unless something significant happens related at the store or during dinner that either aids the core desire or thwarts it. But just because having dinner is something the characters would do isn't a reason to keep it in your story. We're writing stories about a character in crisis. The crisis is bigger than themselves, and they're forced to rise to the occasion. That is what carries them through Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. The crisis, the problem your character must solve. That means your character is not the same person we met on page 1 because the stakes are too high. Every scene should be in service of that crisis, the problem your character must solve. April Wheeler's husband, Frank, hates his job, and so moving to Paris seems like a good idea until his wife gets pregnant. So characters are in crisis. That's what makes the story move, and it's what forces your character to rise to the occasion, to become who they really are, to become more actualized. That doesn't mean they get what they want, necessarily. Frank and April Wheeler don't get what they want. Humbert doesn't get Lolita at the end. He loses her. But in losing her, he becomes a better person. But every scene is related to that core desire. The problem your character is trying to solve. Okay, let's wrap this up. To breathe life into your plot, you need to know the story beneath it. Character is what fuels your plot. It gives it energy and momentum. Here are 3 secrets about character to build energy and momentum into your plot structure. Number 1, desire versus inner need. Your character is consciously aware of what he or she wants to get by the end of your story, but the inner need is what's really driving him or her. Number 2, the pleasure principle. Your character is running towards pleasure, their conscious desire, and away from pain. Number 3, character in crisis. Your character has a problem she must solve. To solve it, she must rise to the occasion. She must change. By the end, she'll be a different person than the one we met on page 1. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And if you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform and please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.